Good morning. We will call the session to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Snyder.
Here.
Bone.
Here.
Schulte.
Here.
Gambrell.
Here.
Dorian.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Chairman Stamas.
Here.
7 present, 0 absent.
Thank you. We will have invocation and the pledge, Commissioners.
Heavenly Father, we come to you in humility. You are the great God who knows all things, sees all things, and has power over all things. Nothing escapes you, and you know what lies before us. We know major decisions are being worked on by our leaders in both the federal and state governments, which will affect all of us in some way. Lord, we ask that you help them to work together to make wise decisions that are best for all of us. Help us to have patience and give them grace as they work on the many complex issues they face. They know things we don't, and you have put them in these positions of responsibility and authority. Guide them and bless them. Help us to be faithful to do our individual parts here in Midland County with all diligence and with excellence. Help us make wise decisions on this board and at our committee meetings later today, that they will be prudently beneficial to all our residents and all affected by what goes on here. We pray for your blessings and on all those who live in Midland County, and that your plans for this county be fulfilled. You are good, and I thank you that we can ask all these things in confidence, in hope, and in peace. In the precious name of your Son, I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and we'll look for a motion regarding the minutes that have been attached to the Commissioners.
I move that the minutes be approved as presented.
Thank you.
Support.
Without objection, minutes are approved. We have a special program today with the economic development efforts of the Midland Business Alliance. And good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Tony Stamas with the Midland Business Alliance, Nicole Wilson, our Vice President of Economic Development. Just appreciate to get a few minutes of your time to give you an update. We have had a legacy partnership with Midland County in terms of economic development efforts. And if we pop over to the next slide, I guess you're going to help me with that. It kind of has lots of facets. Nicole's passing out some updates here, but when we look at, the physical infrastructure, how we help the businesses that are already here in the community, innovation, what it means to be a modern explorer in 2025, certainly talent is an issue, business attraction, and housing. And that's something we'll talk a little bit about. We think this is a community, a county where people want to live, but we need to make sure that we have housing capacity. And so on the next slide, we've kind of got our team here, and as I mentioned, Nicole, we just brought Angie Baxter, who had been on our team, over to a role specifically in economic development, Andrea Foster, who is with us today, Jason Story, who works on talent, Jennifer Acosta, who's working on housing, and Mary Beth Cancala, who helps in terms of working with all of our partnerships. So appreciate the opportunity to be here. On the next slide is just kind of, we've got a strategy council that specifically works on it, different voices, throughout the city and the county. Rob Musselman, Woody's International Engineering up in Edenville has some wonderful perspectives. And then formally for the county, through 338 board statutory act, we have the Economic Development Corporation of Midland County. Kelly Eiter is the president of that. And so we've had some opportunities with properties that are held, and we kind of coordinate that on behalf of the county to sell some properties in the last couple of years, which has been exciting to see, and hopefully more will be forthcoming as we see greater development. And then a number of other wonderful volunteers, whether it's on Housing Forward, what we call RAD Talent, which is in the talent space, our Innovation Roundtable. And so I'm going to turn it over to Nicole on the next slide just to talk about our infrastructure, our property, what we do. And as we're going through this, just at any time, please stop us. We welcome your questions. Just, again, appreciate so much the partnership.
Good morning. Thank you for your patience while I dealt with my copies this morning. As Tony mentioned, we have a great group of volunteers that support all of our economic development organization and all the initiatives that we work on. We feel like community involvement is really an important part of what we're doing to make sure that we're all on the same page as we're working through things. I gave you 2 documents this morning. The first one is the presentation that you'll see us walk through today. The second one is actually a 5-year overview of what we've been able to accomplish in the 5 years that I have been in this role. Not for any purpose other than 2020 was a pretty important year in our history and evolution of what's been happening. And so it gives you kind of a picture of where we have come since our COVID break, if you will.
And I would note Nicole started about a month before COVID. So there were a number of people that we worked with that hadn't seen her outside of a little picture on the screen for a good year afterwards. But we've gotten to connect with them in the intervening years.
Yes, I do think a good friend of mine said to me, boy, you picked a great time to go back to economic development. It's definitely an interesting time. So let's get into the meat of it. If you look at the page and up here on the screen, the business support and growth portion and infrastructure and property. This is one facet of economic development that we work in. And I like to give kind of a layman's terms, or what do we actually do in this space? So on the left-hand side of this slide, you'll see in business support and growth, we do business connection services. And so what that means is we're sitting down with our businesses to help them problem solve. So if there's a challenge they're trying to overcome, it allows us to help make the right connections or steer them toward a solution. Sometimes it is, we're really having a hard time attracting the right talent, and we have a very particular niche that we need to fill. And so then we'll work with our talent group or work with universities that can pay those degrees to try to make some connections there. Other times it's a driveway has to be moved, or they're ready to do an expansion and property acquisition is a part of what they need. And so that's kind of where the MBA and our role in economic development sits. We also work on incentives, so sometimes that's tax abatements, sometimes it is grant opportunities, depending on what the project looks like and what might be available. So that sometimes is working with the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, other times it's working with the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development, other times it's the Economic Development Administration, so we get a really cool opportunity to work with all of those agencies. We do a lot of market research and data alongside our company, so if they're looking for a market expansion to maybe launch a new product line, or see where an existing product line could expand. We have access to databases that allows us to see what other companies are working in those spaces and where might be the best fit for them to connect. We obviously are connectors and conveners in everything that we do, both locally as a part of our community collaboratives with our committees, but also kind of across the state and even beyond. When we sit down with those businesses, we recognize that jack of all trades, master of none, perhaps, except for incentives, I'll take that one. There are a lot of times when they need a greater level of finance support, or they need a greater legal opinion. And so making those connections to professionals that we work with and that exist in our community, always wanting to keep business-to-business connections as much as possible in Midland County, we provide that service as well. We do provide small business support and a collective intake. So whenever we have a new business owner that comes into the community, we'll sit down alongside our counterparts at the Small Business Development Corporation, and we'll help to map a path for growth. And so that's one of my favorite things to do about this role. In 2024, there were 6 business expansions across all of Midland County, some of those within the city, but we also saw some of those with some outside the county as well. Hudamaki is working on an expansion. That's in Coleman. We had about 90 business connection visits, so that's all the things I just talked about. We saw 2,350 jobs retained in 2024 throughout Midland County. Capital investment last year was about $305 million, and we supported $138 million in incentive applications between grants, tax abatements, and other sources of capital for those projects. We have 54 projects or properties in total that we manage as a part of the EDC, and Tony mentioned property disposition. So as a part of that portfolio, one of the projects that we saw did happen within the city over on Shooty Drive, we were able to help Xeris Performance Fluids do an expansion by selling off a piece of property that was owned by the EDC. So that was a great opportunity and partnership. We did put out about 12 communications on different projects and updates on economic development. So try to keep everybody knowing what's going on as much as possible. you wouldn't mind. The next slide. We also work in economic development in business attraction and innovation. So what that looks like on a daily basis is doing some industry-specific pursuits, meaning we have 5 or 6 target industries in Midland County that we know, based on the infrastructure, property we have available, talent, quotients, we're able to match make with certain companies or certain industries better than others. So when we do industry-specific pursuit, that means we share the essentially the value proposition of what Midland has to offer to companies that are likely to locate in our area. So that's what we see here on the business attraction piece. We respond to requests for information from the MEDC. So whenever we have a company looking to locate somewhere in Michigan, we provide information on sites, infrastructure, and talent that exists here in Midland County. We engage with our site selector professionals. These are typically real estate and legal professionals that work on behalf of very large companies to site their next location. That's what site selectors do, and we engage quite a bit with those folks. We, of course, promote our industrial and commercial properties quite a bit, alongside our commercial real estate friends, as well as the EDC portfolio. On the innovation side, we have an innovation roundtable. It has 9 members of community participation, and they come together to provide feedback to new startup companies, to oversee our business incubator grant with the state of Michigan, and support them in that way. In terms of statistics or metrics, right? How are we doing? We had 3 new businesses attracted last year. In terms of comparables across other communities of our size and orientation, that's very typical for 2024. We saw 5 new companies created. We had 35 qualified leads that we followed up on. Some of those are still in progress today. We served 75 companies through our innovation program. We saw about $270,000 in owner investment, and then follow-on funding, so things like venture capital, angel investment, grant support of over $4 million for those startup companies. So we're doing pretty great. And we do that in partnership with the CMU Research Corporation as well. If you would, the next slide. One of the areas that MBA is really leading the way across our region is in how we're working on talent. And apologies, my red text is not showing up very well, but you'll see it quite well on your printouts and in the actual PDF. We built out a talent continuum because what we have found is that somewhere along the way, from the time a person comes into our community until perhaps they retire or mentor, we're losing folks, right? And so where do we employ our efforts to best make sure that we're supporting talent across that entire life cycle? So everything from attracting new people to come into our community and then supporting our businesses as they're actually acquiring that talent. So one of the projects that has come out of this continuum is that we are in production on a video series that will be accessible to all of our employers, that when they extend a job offer and they're seeing the value proposition of that employer, they can scan the QR code at the bottom of that offer letter that will show what our community's value proposition is for that employee to choose to be a part of our community. It'll show things like recreation, education, community assets, and employers of choice. So it really is a great opportunity for our employers to get that community value proposition in the hands of a prospective employee. So that should be done, we're thinking around June, July, and be in the hands of our employers, by the fall, for sure. So we're excited about that. We're doing some great work in professional development with Jason Story. So he is leading what he's calling the Good Work series workshops that are happening at the MBA. The next one is March 20th. It is focused on, or it is a collaboration between our young professionals group and the MBA proper. And so that, I think this one is called Negotiating with Yourself, How to Set and Keep Realistic Goals. So that's a little piece we're doing in the train and develop portion. And really the next spot for us to tackle is how are we really employing the talents, knowledge, skills, and abilities of folks in our community who maybe have retired from their first career and have so much more to give in our community. And how do we create a program that allows that transfer of knowledge or mentorship in a more formal way? We think that's really important. We talk a lot about the accessibility of leadership in our community. And so that's one more way we want to be sure that's happening. You would? I'm rolling through this, so please don't hesitate to stop me if you have questions. Housing Forward is one program that we're exceedingly proud of. About 3 years ago, we recognized, I'll back up even before then, when I first started, we had an expansion, and I've shared this story at this board before. We had an expansion that came in, and they asked for, so we're in competition for another site. We'd really like to move 200 families to Midland County, but we're doing some analysis on the housing situation, and we can't find housing for anyone except for our executive team. And I was like, no way, we're good. I'm sure there's housing. Let me take a look at the market. And there, in fact, was not housing in any way, shape, or form that would have capacity for 200 families in the price ranges that they were going to be paying, even with follow-on spouses employment. And so it really, through a collaboration with the Strosacker Foundation and the Midland Area Community Foundation, birthed Housing Forward. We are one of a very small group of housing agencies, and really only the second to connect with an economic development organization, and really underpinned by the need to grow housing specifically for workforce. What this is not is affordable housing. This is very much workforce housing between 80 and 120% of area median income. So you'll see here just some key accomplishments from 2024. We've been working hard on kind of taking the information from the Michigan State Housing Development Authority's data portal and understanding what that looks like for Midland. So for example, there's great data provided based on the number of jobs that have come into Midland County, how many housing units we are either in the positive or the negative. And I don't think I have it in here, but if my memory serves, we're down about 2,820 units per 1,000 jobs we've created in Midland County over the course of the last 5 to 10 years. And I'm happy to provide that data to you if you'd like to see it. So we've taken that data, we've made it Midlandized, right? We're showing what's actually happening in Midland County, not all the way across the state, but we're certainly comparing ourselves to other comparable communities. We're midway through our regional housing needs assessment that will provide a community profile of Midland County, what kind of housing is needed, at what price points, who can afford it, and where it should be placed in terms of dispersion of housing across the county. We expect that to be done mid-May, so we're really excited to see what that turns out to be. Our last housing study was done in 2017, 2018, and there was a greater focus at that time on more of an affordable product or increasing affordable housing, where now we've recognized that the shift is really needed in the attainable or workforce housing space. Lots of other data points on here, but we do have a Housing Forward Facebook page, so definitely go and check it out if you're looking to see the progress on the initiative. We're always putting content out through our new and next newsletter with the MBA. Part of that is really telling the story of our workforce that is struggling with housing. I think sometimes we forget that even our very employed folks are still struggling with housing in that 80 to 120%. Doing lots of project-based advocacy at both the state and local levels. We have about 13 developer clients we're working with right now to provide technical assistance. What that means is that we are helping developers to understand how to employ the programs and the incentives and what opportunities are available, both in property and other things, so that they can get a project done. We had a project we were working on out in Coleman where had the land, has done developments before, but just couldn't figure out how to use the My Neighborhood program. And so it was helping to build that capital stack using some of those state programs that can help to offset development costs in this economy we're in right now. We did submit 6 projects in for that My Neighborhood funding. The first round, we did not receive any funding toward that. So part of that advocacy goes back to the state to really talk about where our deficiencies are or where the challenges are. I can tell you our biggest challenge is that we're not quite urban, but we're also not really rural. And so we're kind of in this really fun middle space. So not only do we need middle income housing, but we also need to find it for a middle income community and one that sits right in the middle. So that's always fun. And then lastly, I think you all have received an invite to join. We've also built out a Housing Forward Resource Lab. And in that resource, it will literally help you to build out a pro forma of how to get a housing project done and what goes into that funding. It's a really neat resource. If you'd like to have a look, I can make sure the link comes back to you. But it's been a really fun program. We're making really great progress. And we're told we're the only organization in all of the state that is offering this level of technical assistance. So that's really great. And with that, I'll entertain any questions unless you have anything.
Yeah, just, I think Nicole did a great job of going through this quickly. We welcome your questions today or anytime. Certainly not all inclusive. We've talked to you regularly about infrastructure and how impactful that is. We were here a few weeks ago and we talked about broadband. All these are really critical pieces of how our community is going to grow and thrive and, move into the decades ahead. So we so much value the partnership and being able to work with Midland County and with all of you. And as Nicole said, we welcome any questions.
Thank you.
I would, going back to broadband, how are we having the service providers for the broadband? Are we having a lot of providers that are interested in providing the service for us, or are we having a hard time getting providers?
No, I think what we found is it's narrowed down. I mean, I think when this initially came out, there was a large universe of providers. I think that's narrowed down. We focused on a couple key providers. April 9th, although, these dates tend to get moved, April 9th is a key date in terms of the BEAD grant, when the applications will be in there. So we're with a couple, but I think they're all serious. And, Scott was in here and talked about this, and we're, in daily conversations with them. And, Midland County has been great in terms of how we can help them to do that and make their applications in as strong as possible. So, yeah, it's a much smaller universe, but I think that had to happen. And there was a few folks that got in on the front end of this that just didn't have the capacity. And so we want to make sure these are people that are really going to have an impact in Midland County.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I have some.
Commissioner Snyder?
Thank you. Thank you for being here, and I appreciate knowing how successful you are in our community and really that you built yourselves into a self-sustaining organization, and I appreciate that. So the MBA, when did it change names? It used to be the Chamber of Commerce in Midland.
Well, it was two. It was Midland Tomorrow, who had traditionally done economic development, which I think was in the 1990s. It was kind of a merger of what was economic development and 338, which I think used to be housed directly with the county. And so Midland Tomorrow had been around. And so I think it was before my time, but I think they formally put it together 2016, 2017. And then we kind of relaunched it. I started in 2018. But it took the Chamber of Commerce, Midland Tomorrow Economic Development, and I think that the thought was from the folks who were active is, look, the mission's the same. We're here to help grow our community, to increase investment. And I do say that I think in the time of unplanned pandemics, dam breaches, it was a bit of proof of concept because we were all hands on deck and, okay, how do we help businesses in something that nobody had a playbook for? So, yeah, I'd say 2018, 2019 was where we really saw it formally move forward.
Thank you. I thought I was on board for that. Yeah. So I appreciate that. One thing, so I appreciate you mentioning Coleman, and I know you've helped out in the Sanford area too, and we also have a Sanford Chamber of Commerce. So I would really like to see maybe some more metrics built out of the businesses you serve, broken down maybe by area, locations, and then, maybe some employee information. I know we have a Leadership Midland program, and I'd like to see some metrics of, they're employed by Midland businesses. Are they county taxpayers? Do they live in Midland County? So if you could break out some metrics, I think that might be helpful for myself and other commissioners. I don't know if I'm speaking for everybody, but I think that would be helpful for me. I don't know how hard that would be to do, but I think we would find that interesting. And then mentioning Coleman, I've had some talks with the mayor and then the Warren and Geneva supervisors, so that makes up Coleman. Really, for that new growth opportunity that they have by 10, that I appreciate all your work and hard work on that. They would like to see maybe some lower property regulations and really would help them to attract more businesses. And I understand why we have some of them, but maybe we could relook at those because they inform me the flag that they fly may not go into those regulations and things. And so maybe too stringent of regulations, maybe not helping some businesses come into that area. So I know we've talked about that before, but that's just something I wanted to touch on too.
Yeah, that's a great point and very timely. We were just talking about that within the last couple of weeks and in talking to the community and the community leadership about, okay, what's the best fit there for CR Miles? And, there are some, physical opportunities and challenges. And so what's going to make it the best? What's going to bring businesses then, because we want Coleman to thrive and we want to fill that park up. And it's, I think the infrastructure is there in such a way. So absolutely, that's a conversation we have been having and we'll continue to have with them because we share the same goal.
You're always ahead of me. Thank you.
No, you're right on track.
Thanks.
Commissioner Smith.
Yes. I think my question is for Nicole. You mentioned, so I'm very interested in the housing forward that you talked about. So it's workforce housing, and you said it's for 80 to 120% of AMI?
Correct.
Okay. Could you give like a guesstimate of like about what price range houses that would include?
Sure, so it's changed quite a bit. So when we started Housing Forward, we thought that would fall somewhere between 175 and 275,000. Now we're seeing those pricing at about 275 to 350.
Okay.
It's an interesting, and those are price points that are set by MISTA. Those are not our arbitrary decision. Those are price points that MISTA sets.
All right, thank you for that. And you said the gap is still about how many houses in Midland County for that?
So based on what we saw in 2018, I could give you an update there, but our new housing study that will come out in May will be much more specific. We actually are doing subsets where that AMI will be specific to each area. So while the city of Midland might see something at 275 to 350, we may see something different in the village of Sanford or in the city of Coleman. So once we have that data back, it gives us a much clearer path, I guess would be the way to say it, in what developers we can bring based on the price points they can offer and the product that they're building.
Yeah, any of that data that you could send forward on to me, I would be very interested.
Yeah, happy to do so.
Thank you. Commissioner Dorian?
Thank you for coming and presenting to us. You had mentioned earlier about using tax abatements as an incentive tool.
Correct.
I would say exercise that card with caution.
Absolutely. So anytime we evaluate a project, we look at job creation, job retention, and capital investment before we suggest incentives. And there are baselines that are established by the state. And then also, even at the local level, we want to make sure we're, getting the value as a community for the tax abatement that they're asking for.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Schalke?
First, thank you for coming, I appreciate it. In the more rural areas, what are some of the issues of concerns or why we're not able to supply housing? Is it, or developments? Is it, what kinds of things are you seeing?
Sure, certainly. I can share a couple of things. From the county perspective, it's really just getting developers interested in a more rural product. Typically, they're a little less dense, and so the price point is higher to build less dense from an infrastructure perspective. And then wetlands are a challenge in Midland County for development, both industrial, commercial, as well as residential. And on a smaller scale project where you're trying to maximize the use of a piece of property, if 50% of it is covered in wetland, it's, and you have to mitigate, there's a cost there, and there's really a challenge to find credits available in a mitigation bank. It's a little bit technical, my apologies, but so that makes it a bit of a challenge as well. Floodplain, wetland mitigation, yeah.
And I would add in, broadband. I mean, do you have that connectivity on those parcels you're looking at? You have the other infrastructure items that developer would be looking, whether it's water or sewer. And so I think, and some of it depends what the developer's looking at, but I think it's kind of a mix of things. And so we want to make sure they know what tools and opportunities are out there.
All right. Any others? I would just ask, having opportunity to serve with the housing forward. It's interesting to hear all of the different avenues and ways that we're pursuing to find not only the workforce housing, but an additional taking in consideration how we make housing affordable across the entire spectrum. And so I appreciate that very much.
Yes, Absolutely. And what we know about housing is that as those houses maybe sell or as folks kind of move up or grow into a larger home, it's a little bit higher of a price point, the downward pressure on that affordable housing then is far less. What we know about Midland folks is that we're quite risk averse. And so folks are less likely to take on a larger home unless it's an easy transition into the next price point. So as we can make that workforce housing available, and folks can level up just a little bit into their next home, maybe not their starter home, it can make the downward pressure a whole lot less.
All right. Any other discussion? Seeing none, thank you so much for the presentation.
Thank you for being here.
Next, we'll move on to public comment. And I know that we do have public comment, so to remind those in attendance, there is an agenda at the back of the room. If you'd like, it does give guidance on public comment, and we try to keep it consistent at 3 minutes, along with asking for you to provide both your name and address. With that, I will open it to public comment. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm C.J. Michelson. I live at 3716 Valley Drive. And Commissioner Smith, thank you for the question on what the housing costs. Because if that's workforce housing, that's pathetic. Nobody can afford that kind of stuff at the median income that people make here in Midland County. I've been associated with and have worked within small government for nearly 4 decades. I served my community, all of my community, to the best of my ability during my service. I learned a few things about the government I represented. One is that you embody the confidence of your constituents in their government, and in order to keep that confidence, you must prove to them on a daily basis that you will act in their behalf in a fair and even manner. That, in order to keep that confidence, you must be inclusive of all the marginalized groups within your community. If you cannot prove that, you will lose their goodwill and confidence that their government will act on their behalf. Once that confidence is lost, it cannot be regained without great effort. A few weeks ago, I wrote an op-ed for the Midland Daily News asking this governing body to include marginalized communities into their opening prayer, to show their constituents that they can be an even and fair-minded governing body, to uphold the confidence placed on them by their election. And, like any orange and petty tyrant, you chose to double down on your exclusionary practice of a singularly Christian prayer. I didn't ask you to stop violating our founding fathers' wise effort to protect the marginalized from what they deemed tyranny of the majority. I didn't ask you to uphold the First Amendment's tenet that government should have no law respecting an establishment of religion. I merely asked you to serve your community like you were elected to do, with fairness and an honest effort to serve everyone, the marginalized included. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for serving this great city and county of Midland. I am very happy to live here. My name is Jennifer Austin. I live at 5603 Pine Meadow here in the city. The Constitution starts with, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union." We all know in 1787 that meant rich white landowners, male landowners, though that phrase has become an indelible part of our American society, because now it means all people, rich, poor, white, black, male, female, gay, straight, Christian, Muslim, and so many other identity markers that make up who America is. If you are an American citizen, we the people means you. We, as a nation, follow the ideal of the Constitution, embodying that phrase, more perfect union, to continually make this a better place than anything our founding fathers could have imagined. We also know that in the Constitution, the 3/5 compromise was created to say that a slave is worth 3/5 a person when calculating population for the purpose of representation and taxation to mollify the southern slaveholding states. But the Emancipation Proclamation and the 13th Amendment nullified that clause, as well it should. It was heinous and dehumanizing. Now slavery is illegal, and the phrase, all men are created equal, holds more weight than it did in the Declaration of Independence in 1776. We are created equal, though that parity and equity are not yet achieved. We follow the ideals of all men are created equal, not the worldview of our founding fathers. Women, too, were ignored in the Constitution because in 1787, women had no independence, no freedom, no ability of self-determination. We fought for those rights we hold dear, including the 19th Amendment, which codified the right to vote we always had, but was denied to us. We now live the ideals of that revered document, the Constitution, not what our founding fathers laid out for us 238 years ago. The Constitution guarantees us freedom of religion. That means that each individual can have their freedom of religion, but it also guarantees that no state-sanctified religion will impede our ability to worship or not worship as we individually see fit. Though not specifically in the Constitution, the separation of church and state has long been an ideal of this country, talked about in length by many constitutional scholars, including Thomas Jefferson. The ideals of that separation should be upheld in the same way that many of our ideals now operate, not in the meaning of 1787, but in the meaning of 2025. Though I was raised in the Methodist Church, and I will say the Methodist Church practically raised me, and my children attended a Catholic school, prayers and other religious acts would be performed in spaces that were not specifically religious have always bothered me. I have always wondered why we
Ms.
Christians...
Austin, just to let you know, the 3 minutes has left. I'll allow 1 more minute to finish.
I've always wondered why Christian prayer was chosen over Muslim or Jewish prayer or Hindu prayer. In my perfect world, people would be able to attend sporting events and government meetings without being slapped in the face with a religious dogma that they themselves may not adhere to. At the very least, offering a neutral, non-religious specific prayer would be more welcoming than the entire community. As Dem Chair, I receive a lot of requests for information about this community. Is it welcoming to LGBTQIA? Is it welcoming to black and brown people? Is it welcoming to religious differences? I want to tell them that that is true. So please make it so and offer a non-specific prayer.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Larry Levy. I live about a mile from here with my wife, Cheryl Levy, at 1726 McGregor Street. We have lived in Midland since 1977, and I understand that a regular part of the county commission meetings is a decidedly Christian prayer, a prayer in Jesus' name. I would ask you for several reasons to discontinue that practice. Number one, nowhere in your mission statement that I can find is such a prayer mandated, nor should it be. Number two, nowhere in your operating rules is there a mandate for prayer of any kind. I'm not sure there needs to be a prayer. I served for 8 years on the Midland Public Schools Board of Education, where we never prayed before meetings. Number three, as with the local Board of Education, you were elected by a diverse public, to represent a diverse public, to do public county business. You are an arm of local government. I encourage you to reconsider your mission and rules as presented on your webpage. Number four, most of all, I encourage you to not make assumptions about the religious affiliations and faiths of our community. Suffice it to say, while Midland County has many houses of worship, it is not solely a Christian community, and this board is not a house of worship. If you wish to pray to Jesus, do it in your house of worship and in your home. If you insist that an invocation is necessary, and I'm not at all sure that it is, word your prayer so that it is inclusive of all beliefs and non-beliefs, representative of our community. Pray so that not only the larger houses of worship and faiths are represented, but also the smaller congregations, the minority faiths, including the atheists and agnostics. And number five, any county resident may run for and be elected to this commission. Whatever qualifications may be desirable and even necessary to serve on the board, observance of Christian faith is not one of them. We are all neighbors here. Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Sikhs, and other faiths, religious and secular. As it happens, I am Jewish. My wife was raised Methodist. We have friends of many faiths, but we are all neighbors nevertheless, and should be treated as such by our elected public officials. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Laura Bell Phillips. I live at 2516 Lambros, and I would like to offer blessing for this gathering. Merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. A blessing. May the light continue to guide us, reminding us that there is hope in the darkest time. May the goddess in her three forms continue to bless us. May we look to her maiden form for hopeful reminders of new beginnings. May we look to her mother form for loving reminders to nurture and care for all things. May we look to her crone form for reminders of wisdom and that all things grow and change and end. May the earth beneath us continue to ground us. May the sky above us continue to inspire us. May you take this blessing from this place in your heart. Blessed be, so mote it be, in the name of the goddess.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other public comments today? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Who has, you're welcome to come. Good morning.
Good morning. Hola. Mi nombre es Linda Martínez. Vivo en 3716 Valley Drive. Llegué aquí hasta 5 años. Estaba muy preocupada a vivir aquí en Midland porque soy alguien que hablo español. Pensé si me van a tratar lo mismo como otra gente, mismo como la gente aquí. Miro que en el rezo que ustedes usan es de una religión y que no tienen rezos de judíos o de muslims. Esos grupos como yo se preocupan si van a estar tratados igual como tú y como tú. Ojalá que sí. Te pido. Gracias y que Dios te bendiga.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Good morning.
My name is Daniel Moore. I live at 1600 Rockwell. Okay. That little intrusion into Bay County. I just want to say that I'm a Roman Catholic. And I find any prayer that doesn't start with the sign of the cross to be somewhat offensive. And I don't like it. And I find it very offensive that this committee has a prayer starting without the sign of the cross. Now, I don't want to subject you to that because everybody's different. So I'm going to ask you politely, please terminate the prayer. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a nice day. I'll see you later.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Allison Wilcox. I live at 5202 Sturgeon Creek Parkway. I'd like to echo Jennifer's words that we have an implied separation of powers, separation of church and state in this country, something that I think we all believe is good because there should be no imposition of religion on our citizens who believe differently. In this case, I'd like to read from the Bible, Matthew 6, chapter 6, verses 6 through 7. When you pray, you should go into your room and close the door and pray to your Father who cannot be seen. Your Father can see what is done in secret, and he will reward you. And when you pray, don't be like those people who don't know God. They continue saying things that mean nothing, thinking that God will hear them because of their many words. So if we do need to do prayers, they should be as plain and simple as possible and as non-denominational as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good morning.
Morning. My name is Christy Washer. I live at 929 South Pinecroft Lane. I would like to echo some of the sentiments expressed here already, in that it is inappropriate for a government official to be offering an exclusively Christian prayer in a government meeting. If this commission as a whole is unwilling to offer alternative prayers from other faiths for any reason, maybe it makes you uncomfortable, or perhaps you find it violates your own personal religious beliefs. Please consider that many of the people you represent do not adhere to the Christian faith, and offering a Christian prayer seemingly on behalf of this elected commission and the people it represents does a disservice to those very people you are supposed to be representing. Therefore, I ask that you simply remove prayers from all future agendas. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Jan Lanter. I live at 5811 Stillwater. I came here completely unprepared to say anything. Curious, knowing about things that have happened in the past about we aren't going to vote for a neighboring thing. I can't remember what it was called. And another thing about not having mask signs, advising people it would be wise in the COVID times. And I came now just to say, listening to everything that's been said, at the very least, if we have to have something, why wouldn't it be a moment of silence? I think that Allison's reading from Matthew was a good point. As far as having a moment of quiet, maybe that's a solution to people wanting to have time to reflect and think about, well, whatever, then it isn't an issue as whose God you're praying to. So that's my suggestion.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments? Any others? Seeing none, the board will move on to standing committee reports and resolutions. Madam Clerk.
Dated March 7th, properly addressed, ladies and gentlemen. We, your Finance Committee, have reviewed the 2026 budget calendar as recommended by the Finance Director. The proposed calendar complies with MCL 141.422 as amended, the state law regulating budgets for local units of government, and in accordance with Policy 304.1, the county budget policy, which was approved on November 1st, 2024. The Finance Committee recommends approval of the following budget calendar for the 2026 budget process. June 2025, elected officials, department heads submit budget requests to the Administrator Controller. September 9th, 2025, Administrator Controller recommended budget is assembled and transmitted to elected officials, department heads, and the Board of Commissioners. November 4th, 2025, Board of Commissioners adopts general appropriation resolution and budget. Respectfully submitted, Mark Bone, Chairperson, Larry Schulke, Todd Gambrell, Finance Committee.
Thank you. Commissioner Bone.
Move to approve 8-2-25.
Thank you.
Support.
Is there any public comment?
Oh, my apologies.
Seeing none, is there any commissioner discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Bone?
Yes.
Schulke?
Yes.
Gambrell?
Yes.
Dorian?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Chairman Stamas?
Yes.
7 yes, 0 no, motion carries.
Thank you. Committee report number 2.
Dated March 7th, properly addressed, ladies and gentlemen. We, your Finance Committee and the Human Services Committee, have reviewed the request to create a full-time undersheriff position to support operations of the Midland County Sheriff's Office. We recommend creation of this position, approval of the job description and scoring completed by Municipal Consulting Services, LLC for this position, and elimination of the administrative lieutenant position. We further recommend that the Administrator Controller be authorized to make any necessary budget adjustments. Respectfully submitted, Mark Bone, Chairperson, Larry Schulke, Todd Gambrell, Finance Committee, Elena Smith, Chairperson, Eric Dorian, Jeanette Snyder, Human Services Committee.
Commissioner Bone.
Move to approve 9-2-25.
Thank you.
And Commissioner,
And Commissioner Smith?
Human Services Committee supports agenda item 9-2-25.
Thank you. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, any commissioners' comments and/or discussion? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Commissioner Bone,
Yes.
Schulte,
Yes.
Gambrell,
Yes.
Dorian,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Chairman Stamas.
Yes,
7 yes, 0 no, motion carries.
thank you. Having no petitions or communications, old business or new business to come before the committee, I will move to commissioners' comments and start with Commissioner Dorian.
I have no comment today, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith?
Yes, my comments today are more of a personal nature, but I feel like do affect the whole community. I had a friend this week who was killed in a really tragic situation that was a murder-suicide. And I just want, the whole thing is really tragic, but I just want to put it out there that we do have resources in our communities to help with this. If people want, if you are having any thoughts of hurting yourself or committing suicide, there's lots of numbers to call or text. One of them is 988, similar to 911, but it's 988. And in Midland, we have a wonderful resource in Shelter House that is there if you are experiencing any domestic violence, feel unsafe from your partner. We do have resources, so encouraging people to use those.
Here, here.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Snyder?
Thank you. I do just want to thank the MBA for coming and giving us, their report and answering our questions. It's nice to have that partnership with them. And I'm thankful for the public comments as well from our neighbors, and very grateful for our freedom of speech.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Bone?
No comment?
Commissioner Schulte?
I want to welcome all the visitors, and I thank them for their coming, and I appreciate all the comments that they made, and that they did it so well, and we appreciate that kind of input.
Thank you. Commissioner Gambrell?
Thanks to Tony and Nicole for coming today. They do an excellent job, and thanks to all the visitors who came to exercise their right of free speech. I wish they would have stayed for the entire meeting as opposed to just coming and leaving, but that is their right, and I appreciate their comments.
Thank you. And I have no additional comments other than say thank you for those that have attended and to Midland Business Alliance as well. Moving on to meeting schedules, starting with Commissioner Dorian.
I have no meetings to announce, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith.
Only one, I believe tomorrow, Wednesday at 6 PM, I will be filling in for Commissioner Schulte for the Parks and Rec meeting here in the county building.
Thank you. Commissioner Snyder?
Thank you. We're going up to the 18th?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So tonight, I have Geneva Township at 7 PM and Edenville Township at 7 PM. I believe I will go to the Edenville Township meeting. Then we do have Parks and Rec tomorrow evening at 6 PM right here in the board room. And then right after, if I'm able to make it, I have Jerome Township at 7 PM. The 13th at 9 AM is the Midland County Road Commission at the Road Commission. Monday, the 17th, St. Patrick's Day. I have a meeting in Warren Township at 6:30 PM, and that's all I have to announce.
Thank you. Commissioner Bone?
This afternoon, 1 PM, Finance Committee. That's all I have to announce.
Thank you. Commissioner Schulte?
Are we going to we're having did you mention the A&O, I guess?
I didn't. I thought I mentioned it last time, so yes, we have A&O today at 2:30.
So I'll be attending both Finance and the A&O meeting. Tonight, the Greendale Township meeting at 7 PM at the Greendale Township Hall. Tomorrow night, I'll have the Porter and Jasper Township meetings. Porter's at 6 o'clock at their hall, and Jasper at 6:30. Next Wednesday, next Monday. I'll be going to the Northern Michigan Counties Association up in Roscommon in the morning, 9:45 up there. So that's my meetings.
Thank you. Commissioner Gambaro?
Finance Committee meeting today and DHHS meeting coming up this week.
Thank you. And I have no others on my calendar between now and the 18th that I can recall. Seeing that, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Or
We are adjourned. The meeting will stand adjourned until Tuesday, March 18th, 2025 at 9 a.m. to meet at a regular session of the Board of Commissioners, and the committees shall resume their duties. Thank you.
You can make that out.